Welcome to WP-Tonic, episode 78. Welcome to WP-Tonic. Today we have Zac Gordon on. He's a professional educator, formerly a WordPress teacher at Treehouse. He is now building a JavaScript for WordPress master courses, and that is tough to do. I know how hard it is to build a course. I'm trying to do it right now. So Josh, welcome to Timelines. Jonathan, we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. I'm looking forward to this episode.
Oh, thanks, Zach. We really appreciate you coming on WP-Tonic. We're gonna have a real techie show here, folks. We're gonna delve deep in the world of WordPress and JavaScript. So how's it? So are you recovering from your Treehouse days, Zach? You know?
Oh, wow. Hi, folks. First of all, super excited to be here with you guys. Thank you for having me on. A joy. And yeah, I don't know that recovered is the right word. I think more like gone into hyperdrive from what I used to do in a year trying to pull off in like 3 months' time. But yeah, the transition has fully happened, and I'm in a whole different other world and place now. But yeah, it's going well. It's going well.
Yeah, I think you're one of the training faces of WordPress, and I like to say I really appreciate the courses that you did with Treehouse. I think everything ends and everything's got a purpose. So it was probably time to move on anyway, and I'm sure in the next couple of years you're going to do a lot of fantastic stuff, Zach. So it is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I want to actually say too, like teaching at Treehouse was such an honor and so cool. So I think I was teaching high school and college. I remember when Think Vitamin first came out before it was Treehouse. And so I was teaching in a classroom. I was teaching college and high school. And I had an account, and I gave my students access. I told all my college students, go and sign up there over all the breaks and like learn all this stuff, and was a huge fan. And so it was an honor when I went to teach with them, and going from having a couple hundred or thousand students to having like thousands and thousands was the coolest thing. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity, and to kind of, a lot of that content and the power user stuff and the developer stuff, I've taught it 2-3 times now over and revamping it. So it was such a cool experience, and getting out there and being behind the Treehouse brand was such an awesome opportunity. So yeah, super, super grateful. And for all the students out there that like studied at Treehouse and learned from it, like so cool. Thank you all. It's really great as a teacher to have those connections that reach so many people.
Yeah, I've taken some of your courses, Zach, and your enthusiasm shines through. So let's get on to some of the questions we prior discussed. Funny enough, there's a co-working place called the Reno Collective, and it's a great place with great people, and they're just starting to do some training. They're looking for their first students, and it's going to be 12 weeks intensive training at this co-working centre, and they were showing what one of the students they hoped to teach. So it was 3 JavaScript libraries. It was HTML5 and CSS3 and Ruby on Rails. And after the 12 weeks, they hoped that they would have somebody that might be able to get a junior position. So these requirements these requirement list for what is classified as a full stack developer seemed by the month to be getting longer and longer. Have you got any kind of thoughts or anything you like to say about, is it possible to learn all this, and what's your thoughts about it?
Yeah, it's so funny. I think that's just kind of the nature and the evolution of technology and working in this field. We're in the window of web and what's happening now, but if you talk to anybody who's been in it for 20 or 50 years before it, or you talk to anybody who's doing it 20 years in the future, I'd like to talk to you too. But I think it's going to be kind of the same evolution and pattern. But yeah, so just the contrast, for example, of I was teaching JavaScript before Treehouse, and coming out and teaching after. And so like 4 or 5 years time span, I could say that you weren't talking about build tools, Node, and all of those influences hadn't really happened. So many of, jQuery was just coming out, like Ajax was a hotness. And so that was actually a lot less of a learning curve, and it was easier for people to get into JavaScript with that. Now when you have more build tools and really people understanding JavaScript deeply and doing these like 12-week intensive courses, it is more to get up and running with, except that when you don't know that, then you don't know that, and you just get into it and you have to learn and become familiar with it. And so, yeah, it's definitely a more difficult landscape now in some ways, but luckily, if you didn't know that and you're coming in, this is the way it's being taught, and it's actually a very powerful, like, you know a lot more now if you're coming in and learning it than even just a couple years ago or 5 years ago.
Do you think, obviously, we had SAS and LESS and the pre-compilers that deal with the different prefixes, and we have had these two kind of quasar CSS language. Do you think it's easier because on the same breath you've had the decline of the terrible Explorer browsers that you used to just want to kill yourself with something that just wouldn't work? They're dying out, but now you've got these different compilers and that. Do you think it's actually easier to learn CSS now, or is it the same but difficult in different bits?
A tricky one. I think once you have your build set up, in some ways it's a lot easier now because the tools allow things to be done in a way that makes more sense. In some ways you have to have a bit more of a background understanding, and it is a bit more up and running to get done. And yeah, I think it is a little bit more more to pick up now than it was. I think what was really cool though about how preprocessors and compiling hit CSS first is that you really had a push in learning to be, or at least knowing that you needed to learn the command line is something that's not new to anyone. That's been around for a while thanks to Git. It's been around a while thanks to SAS and things like that. And so imagine if that was just hitting when people in the WordPress world are starting to hit JavaScript, and you have all of that too. Like even designers are pretty proficient in what they need to be in the command line, and that's really cool that kind of happened already and has hit through other avenues that weren't just tech hardcore coding. But it is a bit more to get up and running with. And what's trickier too is like if you learn kind of a bit more antiquated approach and then you try to get into some code that's built very different modularly or how it's constructed, it's not the same. You can't even get in to access what it is and how do I like save this and have it working. So like you can't really access some projects and work on some things unless you have that kind of understanding.
I think we took a little bit more. We're going for a break, folks, and we'll be back, and I'll be asking Zac some more old-fashioned questions. Oh, hi. It's great to have you on the show, Zac. So we had a bit of a pre-live show discussion, and I'm just going to go straight into the first question, Zac, that we talked about. As the months go by, the amount of skills that a so-called full-stack developer is supposed to have, all these JavaScript libraries, Ruby on Rails, CSS3, HTML5, and anything else that anybody feels like adding to the employment specification just seems to be getting longer and longer. Have you got any kind of thoughts or insights about how realistic this is and, just the kind of developer scene at the present moment?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. There is a lot more to it, a lot more tools involved, a lot more scope involved of languages. Being fluent in 5 languages now is not uncommon requirement for even just the basics, and that's not including all the various dialects and frameworks and everything on top of that. So it is a little bit tricky. Luckily, when you learn it this way, you're learning a really powerful stack and you're having a very solid understanding. And a lot of us came into the web of just kind of like hacking our way into it. And I think that you're starting to see maybe a little bit less of that and much more serious. It's also because it's so big, it's also a little bit easier to be niche in just one area too. So while you have this huge full stack requirement, you also have people who could just do CSS all day long and be living great.
Well, that's a good point, actually. So what you might be saying is that if you're trying to get in the industry or re-get into the industry, that just concentrate on one part of it, and then you can start making a decent living, and that gives you the oxygen to learn the rest. Is that what I think you're saying?
It is nice that the industry is big enough now that it is possible to be doing that. I mean, each niche then has not just the technical skill set, but the design aesthetics or the conceptual understanding of architecture for programming that goes along with it. But yeah, the niche option is kind of nice. Although if you're re-getting into it, it's a different world now than it was not too long ago, just to be learning, all the bits and pieces, parts.
Yeah, what are the cores that you think, if you want to be employable in this industry, that you've got to have some, intermediate level? Are there certain bits that you've got to know?
Yes. Well, JavaScript is one of them. I think that for me, it really comes down to, and as a teacher too, the things that I see in the students that always succeed despite everything are those who are self-engaged learners, who have a goal, who have a desire to learn, who enjoy it, who get satisfaction from building things and accomplishing stuff. The people skills, there's so many things. This is something that came up a lot at Treehouse, is like, wow, we could have students take every single course, but does that make them a good employer? Does that make them hireable? And how do we do the rest of that? And how do we teach that? And how do we get there? And so that's an interesting component. But the skill set alone, like what are you looking at today? Knowing JavaScript, knowing the server-side programming language, either JavaScript, Ruby, a bit, Python, PHP, whatever environment you're in, the HTML and CSS, but then the SAS on top of CSS, and then the different components and things that fit in with SAS and all the mix-ins and everything there. Then you have WordPress and all the plugins and everything and themes that go along with it, and then how to do that. So there really is a lot. All that said, you can learn how to install WordPress themes and make a living making websites. And that's pretty cool, and not need to know much code. So there are a lot of options. But yeah, the learning the whole thing front to end right now is it's daunting. Yeah,
that's an interesting thing you're saying there, because I don't know if you agree with this observation. I think this is linked to the changes announced this year around WordPress. As a WordPress person, it's CSS, free HTML, but then it's PHP, and then there's the WordPress framework, and then you got the world of full stack developers where it's JavaScript, Ruby on Rails. And then you can throw in the app developers,
oh my goodness, I completely missed all of that. That's a huge part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So really, to be really good at WordPress, it's almost like a little world of its own, isn't it? Compared to some of these other worlds, isn't it?
It is a world, and I think it has such a lower barrier to entry because it's already built, and for the most part, when you're learning WordPress and you're learning a lot of how to do this, and even some of the best plugin developers out there, when I chat with them, they're like, oh yeah, I learned PHP from just hacking on WordPress and trying to customize themes or plugins. And you're like, what? That's how you learned? You're like, amazing. You're like, yeah.
Well, that's how I learned.
That's how I learned. So there we go.
I'm a real hacker, folks. I'll give it to my proper developers to clean up, but I'm a bit of a hacker. Right, sorry.
Yeah, so that's a cool thing about WordPress and learning any language. HTML, CSS. I used to teach these classes of learn web design through WordPress. So you learn HTML, you learn CSS, you learn JavaScript, PHP, MySQL. All of it is in there and pretty accessible from within WordPress. And you don't need to learn all of it to be able to do stuff. So that's why it's kind of interesting too to hear and see where we're going with JavaScript and taking more of an approach of like, all right, let's not just hack our way through this. Like, let's really take the time to learn it fundamentally.
Well, let's talk a little bit about JavaScript. So you got these libraries, and if you're from the kind of web, if you're coming from the front end or from a designer kind of front end coding, your initial introduction, because I learned JavaScript a few years ago, where you remember those enormous Red Rocks books. I remember trying to learn JavaScript from them.
Oh yeah, the Red. Yeah.
Those enormous. There's one particular, and I got halfway through it, and I thought, this is insane. Nothing works in different browser DOMs. And it was dying out, JavaScript. So people from a design front end, they get into JavaScript. It's jQuery. Would you agree with that? Is that their kind of first modern kind of incarnation of having to work with JavaScript?
Well, that's kind of funny, and where we are right now in learning and working with JavaScript is you kind of have two ways of going about it. Like, yes, I think that learning some basics, like basic syntax of JavaScript, and then learning jQuery to introduce the DOM and understand things more is great. And jQuery was great for teaching JavaScript early on, because be like, okay, here's all of this, and then here's how it's done in jQuery, or here's something with jQuery, and here's how it's done in JavaScript. So you have this like, here's how to, we're not going to code all this every time. It's kind of already done. And so that's really cool. It's evolved from that, though, where now if you go into some of the hacker schools or learning this in more depth, you're less going to take that approach, and you might jump right into NPM and a very different environment and compiling, and you might have skipped all of that. And that's kind of where we are, those two different options. But yes, in general, I really like that approach of learning.
Right. Well, we're going to have to talk a little bit more about this, but folks, we're going for our first break for.
Okay, we're back for the break, and I'm not Jonathan. Thank goodness. You didn't think that was funny, Jonathan? Okay. So anyway, this is going to be an alternate timeline show too. So if a guest doesn't show up, Zach will be in there, unless Zach wants to come in timelines and do a straight one day. Do normal timelines in the morning. So we're going to ask you 3 questions. You have a business. You're running your business now. You're off on your own, right? Running your business.
Yes, I actually have a couple businesses, and yeah.
What are the names of those businesses?
Well, one of them is web hosting for students, and this is a student hosting company. The kind of JavaScript course is now one, and I have some web design related projects that aren't, full-fledged or my full attention right now. So, but yeah, I've done different things over time.
Very good. So we're going to say the first one says, follow your bliss. That's your first success life principle. What's that mean to you?
Yeah, I think that's such a great one, is that we have an in-tune ability within our body, mind, and spirit to tell when something is right and resonates, or to tell when other people give us advice that we're doing something wrong, that actually that resonates. And so I think following things that bring joy to your life, like it is true that you can continue to get happier and happier in life by doing what you love. And so I think that is an important guiding principle to have.
Very good. Now, this is interesting. Your next one really fits into something people have said the last couple of timeline episodes this week. Take time to connect, and basically connect to people, nature, and spirit.
Oh yeah, man. I don't know how off topic from kind of the tech world and all of this it could go, but could I just have a moment of silence? I think that I love teaching WordPress and the work that I do, but there's such deeper connection to be had in life through connection with individuals, through nature, through spirit, through so many different things. And I think we really need to take these times, because what's happening right now in society is it's so easy to just get swept up into just so much stuff to do every day. And you have to be like conscious and really hold it as a goal to bring yourself back out of that craziness and chaos and just have peace in your life. And so taking these time to connect with yourself and with others, keep your relationships going because they'll outlast your individual crazy projects that seem like the entire world to you at the moment, and they're going to be something else 3 months, a year later. So that's something that is really valuable, and as I age little by little, I'm realizing is more and more important.
I've got to say, this is my third sort of career field, and it is really a tough business because there's unlimited amount of work that you can do. You can always work. So anyway, driving on, your last one is, if you love what you do, you will never work a day again. You just work all the time.
This is a quote from Confucius. I think when I taught at high school, my buddy taught across the hall from me, and he had this on his desk as a little quote. And so it's just been in the back of my mind from seeing it so many times over the years. And I just really like it. And it ties in with everything else I've been saying. If you love what you do, you'll never work a day again. And I've always felt that way about teaching and about interacting with people and getting joy from doing something that makes other people happy and their lives better. So I like that one. And I think a lot of us in this world have these kind of jobs, and it's great.
I think Kim was reading my mind. What did you teach in school, and how long did you teach, and where?
Yeah, I taught high school for 7 years. I taught very shortly for like a short time history, world history. And the school had one semester web design program. And by the end of my time teaching at that school, it was a full 4-year web design program. And we had web design, web development, 2 internships, a paid internship program. Kids would be in my class for half the day, making $800, $500 websites in high school. And so this was amazing and a lot of fun. And so that's what I was teaching in high school.
My daughter needs to hear that. We have a magnet school, and Jonathan, you know the Red House, right?
Yeah.
It's a magnet school, and that's where our tech kids go for
nice.
that programming systems and the whole gamut. It's really a focus. And my daughter, who's in 8th grade, is going to go there next year. So I'm really proud of her and getting into the school.
Yeah.
Right.
Jonathan, that's it. So it's all yours. Back to WP.
Yeah, back to the tech, folks.
Good question. Thanks for asking.
I thought they were great answers and great questions. So we were talking about JavaScript, and we were discussing jQuery.
JavaScript.
But let's say, because you already mentioned that when you go to one of these intense training schools, that they probably wouldn't look at jQuery. Of the other, there's a bit of a war going on between these different libraries. Have you got any insights to the one that you think might become the dominant force?
Dominant force, none of them. They're all going to be replaced, folks. And like Rami Abraham's slide at WordCamp US said, everything's going to be JavaScript, and then nothing's going to be JavaScript. So, all right, that's a kind of a cop-out answer. That said, as I prepare this like JavaScript for Master course, and it includes a lot of core JavaScript, it includes some of the frameworks and things like React. And then part of the question I've had is like, how much should I use jQuery? And I just finished building out one of the big projects that's just vanilla JS and doing a lot of stuff that jQuery makes really easy to do. And after doing this whole thing, I'm like, you know what, this whole like bashing jQuery thing is kind of stupid because it has a really good, helpful, useful place. And I think also for a lot of people, especially in our community, that are going to be eased into this, I think it's a really great thing and it's very helpful. And what happens is even when people ditch jQuery and then pick another framework, they're still going to find like selector components and Ajax library. It might be slimmer, it might be separate, it might be, not so much bulk or this or that. But really some of the tools in there are pretty helpful and you're going to end up trying to find somewhere else in a lot of ways too. So for me, where I'm coming with it is that in this course, I do want to actually talk about some importance of jQuery in that. That said, learning how to do what jQuery does without needing jQuery is really important. And I think that I won't have time in the course. There's a course on frontendmasters.com that just focuses on basically how to do everything jQuery does with just JavaScript. And that's a cool skill set and comfort to have.
Can I ask you a question about that, actually? Because funny enough, my position is quite different to yours. but I've heard it from other full stack developers that do podcasts. They say you got to learn JavaScript, the pure JavaScript, before you go on to any of these libraries. But I sampled that madness when I was deep in my rocks books, trying to get something to work consistently in different DOMs, and it never did. So it was a dying language. The only thing that saved it were libraries and dealing with the DOM and differences. So I don't actually really follow that in that argument intellectually. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I think smashing, just pop, very good. I like that. My response to that would be that in terms of learning the fundamentals of the language, they're very basic from my opinion. It's things like syntax, like knowing how to use the equal, plus sign, and semicolon, knowing what a function is, knowing what a variable is, knowing what a loop is. Like even just that, like that's kind of the fundamentals of it. Because even if you don't know that, like then it's all just so confusing. But if you know that, then it makes a lot more sense and is easier, especially if you know some CSS selectors and stuff. But in general, you're right. And I think that's why kind of it has a place, especially as an educator and someone trying to learn JavaScript right now. If you just jump and you don't learn any jQuery, no, that's not true. You'd be able to figure out jQuery if you missed it. But I think we're still at a time where it could be a helpful thing to learn and to leverage and use.
So you've been knocking around with PHP functions. You're not up to building a complicated plugin, but you can knock around a lot of WordPress and the functions, and your knowledge of PHP is pretty not bad, intermediate. You know, you can never stop learning in this game. How hard are you going to find it moving on to JavaScript?
It's going to be pretty smooth in a lot of ways because you won't have to worry about some of the language basics anymore. What's going to be trickier is the environment's different. So learning about the DOM and events and state and some of those things are going to be definitely different. But this is kind of the audience that I'm thinking is the best one for me to target to with the course I'm doing. Is, you know, a little bit of PHP, you played around with some themes. It makes that next step a lot easier versus like going back to those early questions you asked of like, what do you do when you know nothing? You decide I want to be a web designer today. You know, like what does that involve? But
yeah. All right, we're going for another break, folks.
Bye.
Well, we're back, folks.
Quiet for a second.
Well, we're back, folks. So, Zac, is there anything, how do viewers and listeners get hold of you? And is there anything you particularly like to plug or put in front of our audience?
Sure. Well, first of all, this JavaScript for Master course is really where my time is going and I want to draw people's attention to. So JavaScript for WP.com is the place I'd encourage you to go over to. And there's a really great newsletter that I'm sending out with info. Also, if you were a student from Treehouse, a lot of folks have been reaching out since I've left there, and I'd love to hear from you. Just drop a line and say hi. My site is wp.zacgordon.com, which you could get to from Twitter, zgordon. So yeah, just it's been cool hearing from folks that have checked out courses over the years. And yeah, but the JavaScript for WordPress is where this trains are rolling to, man.
Certainly is. I'd like to go on one of our major pre-discussion topics, and it's Zac Gordon's book, The Dip. And I'm on reflection, I could have been I feel I had the potential to be a really, really good developer and programmer if I had really pushed myself. But on reflection, to be totally truthful to my audience, I've tried to learn a couple languages and it's been great initially, and then the learning curve has got dramatically more difficult and you get into this real down dip area, which I didn't realize until I read Zac Gordon's book. And you're in that bottom bit and everything, it's just, you don't understand anything. You know, you've got... So, the Zen Master, have you got any kind of thoughts or philosophies how you
Yeah,
deal
no,
with
I've got no idea what you're talking about, Jonathan, really. Next question.
Cool.
Okay, so yeah, I'll tell you, as a professional educator, especially someone who's always teaching new content, my life involves picking a new subject, trying to learn it, and trying to master it to some level, and then going and teaching it, and then repeating that process with the same content, and then new content consistently. And like, so after doing this for a decade plus, which, you know, is a little bit of time to get comfortable, like that rhythm and that dip is just so patterned in there that now a lot of what I do involves just psychologically being prepared for it. And so I do a lot of mental time travel, and I just, in this moment, go in and I say, all right, I'm this point in the project. I know this point is going to come. I know this point is going to come, and I know the ending point is going to come. And I just kind of emotionally, psychologically feel each state of that, process it, have faith, and know that each of those is going to come. I'm going to get through it. But having a big enough goal and deadline at the end that's pulling me through to actually completion is also huge, because so many times I've taken on stuff that I want to learn, but I don't have enough impetus or pull in my life or from the universe to like that needs to get done. So for me, I always like to take on teaching new courses that I don't know, because it forces me through this process, and that dip is going to come. And just knowing that it's going to happen, being psychologically, being emotionally prepared, like having other people in your life prepared so that when you get there, they're like, it's all right. You could do this. I know it sucks. You could do this. Take some time off, get back to it. And so like, all right, I'm not addressing actually some of the skills of how to get through it, but this is actually hugely helpful.
Sorry to interrupt, Zach, but I think you got a key point there. I think it sounds a bit light, but actually having somebody that says something positive at a difficult point can make a big difference, can't it?
Yeah, and man, you guys haven't seen it. I'm usually smiles, and I am, but like I've been banging my head with like going through all this. I'll tell you what, man, it's real. It's real. But
all right, then. We're coming, folks, we're going to continue the discussion, and for the next 15, 20, almost, or whenever we get tired of the subject. But for this part of the show, we're going to kind of close down the iTunes part of the show and move on to the YouTube and Blab discussion. So if you're watching us or live, don't just disappear. We've got a lot more to discuss.
Stay around, folks.
And the time machine isn't working right, but that's okay. Oh, there it goes. We got a rock. Barely working. Can you hear it?
I have this theory, too, that you could actually build a time machine with JavaScript.
You do, don't you?
I've done it in dreams. It hasn't happened yet that I know of.
Well, it's an interesting show. We'll continue on. It's more fun. It actually gets a little bit more open when we go to YouTube. Kind of nice. So, folks, listen to iTunes. Gone over to YouTube at WP-Tonic.com. And if you're on Timeline someday, go to timelinesofsuccess.com.
I just love that music. I'm very childish, but I don't apologise.
Don't apologise for that.
That's good. All right. We're out of here.
So, apart from you, so, you know, like PHP, a few years ago, people were saying Ruby on Rails, PHP, it's finished, it's old hat. It doesn't seem to be going, it's not going to go anywhere soon, is it, with PHP 7 coming? It seems to have the old dog seems to have a few more years in it.
Yeah, man, you keep coming home and that old dog's still there, still doing its thing. Yeah. I like PHP for that reason. It has kind of kept it going, and so many things depend on it too.
So, you got any kind of thoughts why it's managed to keep on going? Is it just its flexibility, front and back end?
Okay, so the thought that first comes to mind is actually not having to do with the language so much itself, but like name me one major CMS that was really popular that was dependent on Ruby on Rails, or name me one that was built on PHP that was pretty popular and a lot of people depended on it. So I think that actually that has been a big part of it, because some other languages have come along that, like, in some ways are just a lot cleaner and make more sense and make you feel good to write. Not that PHP doesn't make me feel good to write sometimes, but I really liked Ruby and Ruby on Rails, and that, PHP is still trucking and good.
Yeah, well, what do you see the future? Because, Ruby on Rails until about 18 months to 2 years ago in the Bay Area was the beloved child of the startup community. If you wanted to make a ton of money in programming, you were a Ruby on Rails developer. Now with the cool kids, the JavaScript libraries, it's not such a cool kid. What do you see as the future in Ruby on Rails compared to the JavaScript libraries?
Geez, I don't know that I'm really a good expert to answer that question. I think that there's still enough of it that it will keep on going. I'd hate to see it like cold fusion its way out of the internet, but I really don't know. But
you're still going.
Yeah.
Living as
you
cold
can still get a job as a cold fusion developer and be rocking it. So yeah, I don't really know, but I think that like you said, it'll probably still be around. But a lot of the JavaScript has become the new coolness, and the server side abilities there, and different other frameworks and languages.
I just want to ask you about JavaScript. The reason why I was getting into JavaScript a bit, because it's all coming out now, folks, my confessions.
JavaScript confession hour. Yeah, here we go. Here we go.
I was into action scripting. I was a Flash boy. And I made a little bit of a side living making those Flash intro animations. And I got into action scripting, and then I got into JavaScript, and I thought to myself, this is crazy, this is madness. And then JavaScript just seemed to be dying a death. It had the reputation of just being a kiddie script.
Yeah.
Some of the most horrendous application on a web page were caused by people that got a hold of a JavaScript script. But then it came roaring back. Was it the tool that was there, or was it always a reasonable tool? It was just was it just the browser wars and the different DOMs? I feel like
JavaScript is actually just now getting comfortable. It is a cool kid, and it's past the awkward teenage years and the really awkward middle school years and the kind of childish years before that. So things like being able to write anything and have it compiled down, not anything, but ES6, anything that might not be browser supported, and have it compiled down and be automatically done. That's great. And being able to have all the libraries to leverage, and being able to have a community that has gone through learning enough languages now that it could see some of the inherent beauty that was built into JavaScript early on, because fundamentally it is kind of a different language in how it was constructed. And that's, as I dive deep, it's becoming, from someone who's learned JavaScript over and over again at different levels and continually still, that there's an elegance and a beauty and a fun in the language that, as you learn to kind of program in certain ways and understand how it works, that it is really great and it's cool what it does and unique and powerful, even if not everybody agrees with that. That's kind of been my learning.
Are there any key parts of learning it compared to other languages that are kind of semi-unique to JavaScript that you've got to be aware of?
Yeah, one is the DOM. And I forget, because I think what jQuery did for a lot of people was it introduced and it downloaded the DOM, and it just made sense, and it's second nature. So I forget sometimes when somebody's coming into JavaScript, you gotta introduce this whole concept that they're not used to seeing, even though they've written HTML, and that is kind of the DOM. So that's an important part of it. Understanding events and binding is an important part of it, and understanding how stuff is saved and passed around, how scope and this works. These are kind of some of the core things it takes someone from being able to just kind of be able to play around enough to be able to really be able to understand some of the more complex apps and do things that actually don't break, and they understand why it's working or why it's not. Yeah, it's a different environment.
I'm going to ask you a pretty ridiculous question now. So if you pass
42.
on it, you just 42. You could just blame me. Let's say you got a bit of a WordPress background and got a bit, your CSS. I say your CSS. I have built some websites from the ground up, but I'm not. I think I would have to delve into quite deep now to build. In some ways, it's easier because Explorer is a lot. What is left of it is a lot better.
Yeah.
I think Safari, in some ways, has taken over the role model of Explorer. I found when dealing with things that don't really work, it always seems to be the Explorer. That's the browser that where it won't work. I can't quite work that one out. But let's say you got some knowledge of WordPress and CSS and HTML, and you want to become, pretty good in JavaScript, to do the things you've just said. How long, what kind of commitment are we looking at? 6 months, a year, 2 years? I said it was going to be a ridiculous question, but you are going to be asked this question.
No, this is actually huge and something I've thought about a lot. So one of the reasons I wanted to do a master course, because originally I was going to do this WP Devcasts, and my thought was like each month I'd kind of continue at Treehouse, just a course or two a month, and continually produce stuff. And then I was like, you know what, I really, especially when it came to JavaScript, I'd rather do one thing. You go here, you learn it as a package, you understand it, it. And so coming back to your question, remind me which it was, because I was taking a segue to get there, but
yeah, sure. The ridiculous question.
Oh, the time it takes to learn it. Okay.
How
sorry.
long is it to get some kind of proficiency at
so
it?
I'm kind of working around having a 40-hour block, and I'm trying to do a bit of, based on outlining all of this stuff that I felt was important and how long it would take to not just learn that, be quizzed on it, and build projects on it. But that kind of felt like a good amount of time, and also it's letting me exclude things from it that won't fit into that time. So with a 40 hours straight, you could either take a week out of work and literally work 8-hour days learning this. You could take a month and you learn like a portion of it or a course of it every like 1 to 3 days. You're learning a major section of it. You could do it in 3 months, where you're doing it a bit more spread out, or you could do it in 6 months. So at like one course or one thing per week, one module per week. So my thought on this is, if I get this course out by 4.5, which is when the rest of the API is going to be rolled out into core, and that's going to be in like late March, April probably, that you'd have enough time to do your homework and get to WordCamp US and kind of, you haven't learned JavaScript deeply. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Like, that is a deep statement, but you've done a lot and you have this very solid understanding. So I think that it depends on your schedule, but what I'm going after and trying to feel fairly competent that we're going to be able to do of, your JavaScript pretty well, the framework conceptual understanding, you could work with the REST API, do all of this stuff now, that's the time frame I'm giving it. And then it just is going to depend on your workload and this and that.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, it won't happen just from reading. You're really going to have to be building stuff, because you don't learn single page web app design from just like reading a book on it.
And it's a bit like PHP. I think learning JavaScript around WordPress is a pretty good idea, actually, because you could build some really cool stuff and be paid. You could rapidly get to a standard where somebody would employ you and you make a decent living. You wouldn't be paid as much as a Java. That's one of the things that peeves me off, is this, it's only WordPress. It always makes me laugh when people say that. And it's been shown that you probably earn about 20 to 30% less than some .NET person, maybe. I'm not sure if that's absolutely true. But on the other hand, you could rapidly get to the stage where you're knocking out some cool stuff which you wouldn't be able to do at that level. Did you agree with that?
Yeah, again, how many cool websites are built on Java that like somebody just knocked out on their own that aren't an enterprisey thing? Yeah, I think that in general that probably is true, and something at Treehouse that was regularly done is like looking at how much would you earn from knowing each language. And as a WordPress developer, you might be making a little bit less than if you were working somewhere else. But like, it comes back to this thing of like,
but you're
loving your life, and like, I would not encourage someone to necessarily go be a .NET or a Java developer. Like, learn some WordPress, like make some good money, have a really happy, good work-life balance, and like love your job. I know this is like an overgross generalization, but I'm not the only one. And I actually kind of enjoy Java. I wrote some Java, but.
You'd be very. I'd rather.
It depends on what you're after.
I'd rather stick pins in my toes rather than code Java.
But that's what's kind of cool is you can now make a lot of money coding JavaScript. So yay, you know what I mean?
Yeah. By the way, folks, I've got to point out, and hopefully Zac would agree with me, that Java and JavaScript have no linkage at all. It was Netscape decided to name it something like Java because they thought that was a cool idea, but there isn't much similarity between the two languages. Am I correct about that, Zac?
Yes, you are correct that it was actually a marketing, and they were both. Java had existed and was very big, but JavaScript was named in part after like trying to pick up on the popness and hotness of Java. So there is like a naming similarity in history there, but linguistically as a language, quite some differences there and not the same.
So you kind of do your course, and anybody that's got any sense should do your course. What are going to be, they're making good progress. It's linked to the dip. They're making some good progress, but you've been thinking about this. So I thought there's going to be certain areas that's going to cause them the most pain, isn't it? You got any insights which are the things in their Zen road of JavaScript that's going to cause them some specific pain?
Yeah, so let's talk about all these various ways. It's kind of like one of those dolls. You could stick a pin in any different way. There's a number of them. I think to bypass some of these, one thing that is kind of helpful as you get into JS development that you might not have been using otherwise is a tool that will check your code for errors as you go along, whether in an IDE or whether it's kind of an extension that you have running in the background somewhere. Because
got any recommendations?
I'm going to circle back on that because what I've been using now is a grunt workflow with.
I'd like to point out, Zac, I bored my co-host.
No. I just
you're like, tell me about your JavaScript workflows.
No, actually, I have a question. I've got to break in some questions. Like, I was going to ask, you talked about different skill sets. How much people are making at certain skill sets?
We'll do that. You finish your what you're going to say, Zac. Sorry.
Where were we?
You were going to go back to the development tools. You're going to talk.
So some of the issues that you'll hit and some of the problems. So having something like that, because if something is broken in JavaScript and it fails completely versus in part, sometimes it's nice to know that there's an error before you hit the browser. The bad side is that none of these, I think JS Hint and Lint and some of these don't always catch everything, or it might be trying to stop you from doing something that you want to do. So that's not a perfect solution, but that is nice and part of the workflow. That said, something that will be a little bit confusing is keeping track of information that you think when you click here, you want to get this little bit of information and you want to pass it over to this thing over here and you want this to save it and then later pass it to here. So imagine kind of like a world of multiple form pages gone crazy all at the same time. That is something that is pretty common, and you hit that error and understanding how that is happening.
So you're talking about localized variable compared to global variables. So is JavaScript a kind of object? orientated language, or is it?
Yes, it very much is. It's kind of natively object oriented. So most things are objects and have methods built in and things off of it. It's not traditionally thought of or always programmed in some of the object-oriented ways, and it doesn't have some of the class structure that something like Java or C does. And that's kind of another thing that happens, is that there are some patterns of programming and of development in JavaScript that like the prototype pattern and inheritance that have developed as ways of, since you don't have some of the native class abilities of doing stuff differently, or of functional programming and not using loops and some of these other approaches that are different than what you'd see when you're used to seeing the loop in PHP, and that's kind of most of it. So, and when to learn these and how to learn these and which one to learn is a little bit tough and kind of an opinionated world and an evolving one that's changing. Right. And so these are all kind of tricky things, but all part of the landscapes and things you hit.
Yeah, to recap a little bit, what I think you're saying is that one of its strengths, but also it's for the person trying to learn it to a reasonable standard, is you seem to be saying that it's flexible. It can do things you can do something in various ways with the language, which makes it flexible, but also these choices can also make it a little bit confusing when you're trying to learn. So having an instructor and some structure to it can save you kind of going down dead ends and getting a bit confused. Would that be a reasonable?
So well put. I got into teaching web design because I wished I had more people to teach it to me when I was learning it. And so I feel the same way about this course. Like, I would love to take my course right now so that I could then learn all this in like one coherent manner that's also in the WordPress ecosystem, and then get it back out. So yeah.
Well, I might have to take it, because the way I'm burning through, I had the misfortune to think I could build a SaaS product, and it was taking me over a year, and with some good backup, I might add some excellent PHP, but it still almost bankrupted me. So it's either go back to the world of development or live in a tent, probably. So I'll probably be joining your course anyway, the way things are going. Right, so.
Well, I mean, we haven't really talked about this, but I do have a bit of a fear, or want to like hedge the fear of like people freaking out and be like, oh my God, everything's going to be JavaScript now. Like, yes, we're going in that direction more, but like themes aren't going to turn into just pure JavaScript overnight. And there are even some things in this that we need to figure out. And like, we're going to break out of standards and some really good things that are in WordPress. And if you're going to build plugins and themes, you kind of have to abide by these ways. And we're going to whoop outside of that world real quick. And so seeing all this happen, giving it some time to happen, like even this course, I expect it to have like a couple year lifespan, because things are going to evolve and change, and it's going to be a different landscape in 2017 than 2016.
Yeah, we had a chat. Our last interview was with Annika, that runs a training. She's a experienced developer, fantastic lady, and runs a fantastic training center in the Bay Area. You should outreach to her, really, Zach, because I will introduce both of you together, because she's just a great person. But she was talking about the RESTless API, and where I think this is important is it's connected to my SaaS product. I was actually I put it on the back burner for at least a year, if it ever happens, was having my SaaS, which is based on WordPress, talking to an app. And so I asked a few people in the Bay Area that I know, and these are full stack developers. And when I mentioned, where, you built it in Ruby, or, no, I built it in WordPress, it would go silent on the phone. Or if I was talking to them face to face, they would just go white in the face. And I said, well, I don't want to know anything about that. I know WordPress. Oh, God, why did you do that? Do you think with the RESTless API and JavaScript, she seemed to be suggesting it's going to be a lot easier for WordPress to talk to apps, integration, and that's one of the great things about what might happen in the next year.
Yeah, it's going to be cool to see, I think, over maybe like the next 2 years or so, WordPress evolve and the projects evolve, because that response that folks have now, or that you've gotten, of like, why would you build it in WordPress? And like people in WordPress being like, yeah, we could build apps on WordPress, and people in the app development world being like, why would you build apps with WordPress? And so like we're growing up as a community, and it's going to evolve, and we're going to reach into these others, and then they're going to see, oh wait, there's a pretty solid REST API. Oh, I've seen other stuff done. And, so a year or two down the line, like that's not going to be there, and it's just going to kind of become second nature and more fluid, and all of this happen. But yeah, get our
it was quite funny to watch their faces. How did you? Oh, we built it in WordPress. And then you just get this look at you, like you need therapy or something, you're just demented. I found it quite funny.
I'm not calling Happy Tables crazy, but they also had to build their own API to do this well. So yeah, that will change it. And people that have wanted to do this stuff in the past, and now the tools are going to be a lot easier to do that. That's so cool. And that's going to be leveraged, but that's not your typical WordPress site that's being built right now. Yeah.
No. I don't know what your experience of other content management systems. I've got a little bit. I used to do a little bit of work with Expression Engine, and a tiny little bit with Joomla. Nothing in Drupal. Some of the people I know that actively work in Joomla and Drupal, they actually stick their nose up at WordPress, and I hear this word spaghetti coding. Do you think that's grossly unfair, or because I've got no real experience to kind of confront?
Have you ever seen a Joomla theme? I mean, no. First, let me take that back and say, like, guys, let's not stick our nose up at anything. Like, be caring, understanding people of situations, platforms.
Listen to the Zen Master.
Like, guys, come on, stop arguing. There's going to be perpetual arguments about everything until we just stop doing it and realizing we're all right and wrong. Anyways.
No, to be serious though, do you think compared to some other content management systems, there's always a balance?
That said, I think that I don't know that spaghetti code as an argument against WordPress is a fair one or accurate at this point. That said, I have worked with a lot of different CMS in the past. In fact, I was an Expression Engine developer primarily for quite a while, because they had richer custom post type formats than WordPress. Yeah. WordPress I got into first. I love the environment. The ecosystem in EE was also all commercial, so that's a different thing. But and I taught a lot of that and really liked it. But at that time, that tool made more sense. I worked with Drupal, and it's been cool to see. I haven't played with Drupal 8 since it came out, but I've worked with that and Joomla only a bit, but partly Joomla only.
That's probably why you're calm.
Only enough to make fun of it, I say after saying all that. No, but at the same time, as an educator and as someone who is teaching these different ones, I try to give a good range of it and say, pick the right one for the job. And some people like different ones. I think there's so many reasons to love WordPress.
I found it with the Expression Engine. I do love it. It's got some really cool people in it. A lot less education resources, a lot less. But one of the problems with the Expression Engine was its flexibility, because there was like 7. You could do 7 spins in 7 different ways to get the same outcome. So it got it was a bit like what we were saying about JavaScript, because it's so flexible. It was a bit confusing.
It's so funny. And for those who haven't worked with Expression Engine, it has no theme hierarchy. So your theme is 0. You build everything custom, which is really cool, but also like, how do I do this, or what's the best way, or how do I organize pages if I don't know what to call them or how to do them, or and so that's a funny word. One thing I liked that EE did was it was built on CodeIgniter, and so I also knew at some point that I really needed to learn a framework. This was at the time of Ruby coming out, and so it kind of went with EE in part because I learned CodeIgniter and how to build apps and MVC and all of that at the same time, and so like that was really cool and a big boon to what it has
You were at a slightly different level. I could just knock around some expression engine code and some templates. I knew my place. So it's slightly more advanced, but I loved it in a way. But that was the problem. There was like always 9 ways of doing it.
Yeah, and not something you just install and set up and have running in the same way that you do WordPress. But yeah, I like to say pick the best tools for the job. Perch is a really teeny CMS. There's a lot of hosted platforms and other things out
Perch
there.
is. I only used it for 2 projects. If you haven't heard, folks, about Perch, it's actually Rachel. Oh, I forgot her second name, and her other owner. They're 2 English people, and Perch is. It's not in a database, isn't it? It's a flat file, isn't it? Content management system, isn't it?
I believe so. It has evolved quite a bit, but I think it's grab a perch or get a perch.
I haven't used it in a long while, but they're 2 really smashing people, and I think they're still running it.
Yeah,
but
they are. They're still updating it, and that's amazing. It's cool to see.
It is amazing. It's really popular in the UK. Like Expression Engine. Expression Engine was really popular in the UK. But the problem, it was when custom post types came in with WordPress. I started to use WordPress with version 2.8, between 2.7 and 2.8. And there were some plugins and some themes, but they really weren't very satisfactory. But and you couldn't even build a menu. So when they adopted WooCommerce menu structure and then custom. But then it was when custom posts came in that the clouds parted and the
I'm a CMS now. Look out, world!
Oh, look out! Don't call me a blogging platform anymore.
I'm a publishing platform. Thank you.
Yes, exactly. So I think you're right about, because there's been a lot of talk, about, it's going to be a terrible year. All these themes are all going to break and all these plugins. And I think it's a mixture of Java's, but I think a lot more to do with this is with PH7, isn't it? Because you're going to get some hosting companies that are really going to be gun-ho because of what I've read seems to be the substantial performance enhancements that you can obtain by using PH7. And then you're going to have plugins that are not going to be updated. Do you think that's going to cause more aggravation than probably anything to do with JavaScript?
Yeah, honestly, these ones for me have not been part of either affecting a project that I'm working on, and I wish I could see the benefits of the difference, or just really seeming like that big a deal to me. Yeah. Just kind of my personal stance. And I kind of like how, I don't want to put it on Matt that he's the one doing it, but just in general, there's some heels dragging on it because the backwards compatibility, making sure that we're all brought up. What I do think is really cool is how much talk there is and how much work happens between the hosting companies and WordPress. They're such a big part of the environment. And now that they're starting to have this dialogue and there's some more discussion of let's tackle this together. I feel we're in pretty good hands if you're hosting with some of these great folks out there to be kind of brought through that. That said, I know that there are folks that could argue away on, we need to see it in this and that, the portfolios. But like I said, it's just not so much part of my circuit or what.
Well, the WordPress community, the WordPress community is quite funny, isn't it? It's a great community, but when it does like to, some insane discussions and arguments internally that you think, I can't be bothered even joining this. I don't really think it's worth it.
And that's where I think, honestly, any argument is not really about the subject matter. It's something more internal, and that's worth looking at. And
so to kind of finish our discussion, because I'm running out of steam and I think you're getting
Let me ask
bored.
a couple quick questions too.
Yeah, let's let my co-host say something. Go on.
Yeah, it's been quiet. Jonathan's talking too much. I know how excited he is about this tech stuff. So a question I had earlier, which I don't think is still up. Let's see. I pinned it again. You said how much of the different skill levels is, let's say, Treehouse is saying folks are actually making out there? What should they expect in different parts of the country? in places, world, I should say.
Okay, shoot. I wish I was more prepared. If there are a few main sites and a few main ways that you could find what are the main salaries. Like if you search for main salaries for main languages, like you could even see these bar graphs. But the language wise, like JavaScript full stack, front end or server side is really like at the top now. Being able to know iOS and Java, both for the Java enterprise world, but also a little bit for the Android as well, is a big one. These are kind of like, I think .NET is up there just in sheer number of job availability. And you can make pretty good money doing hardcore development with this. These are not client project, smaller things. So you're going to be working as like a straight up developer, probably at a bigger company on bigger projects.
Right.
So I hope that answers that. I don't know if you meant so much in the WordPress world, but in terms of languages and where they are, that's kind of the top tiers.
Yeah, I actually like to ask a quick question linked to bills. What I know it depends what area you're in. If you're
different
living
parts.
But what do you think an intermediate WordPress front end developer? What do you think is a fair salary?
Shoot, see, this is where like it gets tricky for me as an educator because I have less experience hiring people and running the companies and really knowing that. But I think that in the like 35 to 65 range of like beginner, intermediate, advanced, even just freelancing, doing your own thing and kind of getting up and running. I think that this is possible. What's really cool and appeals to me is the ability to work remotely. So working from wherever and living in places that are affordable and nice is something kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah, like Thailand.
Now we're back to Thailand. Yeah. I worked in the Himalayan mountains for almost a month this year.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
How was our internet?
This was wild, man. It was horrible. The internet for literally like the entire portion of the mountain would just go out, or it wasn't working. And I'd ask someone, they'd be like, "Oh, it's nighttime." And I'm like, "What do you mean it's nighttime?" They're like, "Oh yeah, they just shut off the internet at night sometimes."
Right.
Okay.
They shut off electricity. That's the problem.
They had just gotten internet there where I was, I think, like in the last 2 years, and electricity within the last, kind of 5 or 7 before that. So,
yeah, I think you're probably, I think if you're just a beginner, 30, 35, and I think an intermediate, I think I could become an intermediate if I really kind of pushed myself. But I've always liked the kind of coding with the business side, and it's, it's difficult because you can't do the business, really concentrate on the business and also do the coding. If now I'm not Pippin Williamson. I've had him on the show, by the way.
Great guy.
Zach.
Big fan.
He looks
we need him back.
He's so young looking and he's so clever.
Disgusting.
It's disgusting. It depresses me.
Really? That so inspires me, man. There's such cool beings living right now. He's too cool. I've always been too embarrassed to say
I'm just
hi.
an old fool, so there we go. No, but he's just a great guy, and he's so bright, isn't he? Because he can cope with the business and the coding, and he just keeps.
And so
on going,
this is important too about like why I love WordPress and this environment is like, yes, you could get these high paying jobs, but they're also very niche and you're just developing. A lot of people in the WordPress world just work as developers at another company. A lot of people in the WordPress world love running a business, love having part of that. Even if they know they shouldn't try to be doing it all, they do enjoy it. And there's a phase of their life where this can be done. And you could do that so easily with WordPress. That's a little bit harder to do as just a straight up app developer or someone that is trained in Java. Like your freelancing ability there. I mean, you can be doing projects, but the smaller client and this and that and the websites, it's a different kind of work that you're doing.
Yeah, that's so true because, I forgot his name. The guy that with his chief developer developed Drip. Have you heard of Drip, the email marketing program? I
didn't know there was an inventor of Drip. Yeah, but
well, the owner, he's famous in the startup community, and he's really he's had 4 to 5 successful startups that he's self-financed, and he said that if he had known how difficult Drip was going to, I think they've done it all in Ruby on Rails. If he had known how difficult it was going to be, he probably wouldn't have done it. And he's no idiot. He's a really sharp cookie. But yeah, I've got that feeling.
I've come close to feeling that way about this course I'm trying to do right
now.
Well,
Let me ask you a question about your course.
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
let's talk about it.
Let's hear more about your course. Have you got the structure now? What's going to be in it?
Yeah, I could talk loosely. Bill, did you have any specific or targeted?
The structure's good. That's one of the questions, structure. The other thing, too, I wanted to see the backside, the business side. How are you going to market? What are you using for your content management system? Not your learning management, LMS, or just a membership site. What are you going to do there?
Ooh, good question. It's going to be in WordPress.
It's toughy. And we had Kim on, too. You know Kim?
It's going to be in WordPress. I am working with the wonderful folks at LearnDash.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a couple reasons for that. One is knowing some people that were involved with kind of working on the project a bit as development. Also got a chance to meet them in person at WordCamp, and those personal communications and connections go so far. Now, I've worked with Sensei a bit, and that kind of was my default go-to, but getting to know the folks at LearnDash and what it offers and being able to do certificates, badges, break things up. I'm also looking at some options of if there's a way I could maybe get a more SaaS-y hosted LMS environment still using LearnDash. And I don't have too many details on this yet, but if I wasn't having to build the whole thing myself, that would kind of be ideal. But the basic setup, I would love to be able to have another 3 months to just build a really banging custom like mobile and online suite environment, but I just don't have the time, and it's going to be tough to get this whole thing built and set up. My apologies for just having a white site with black text on JavaScript for WP, but it's clear and concise, and I think it's working for now. So yeah, that's going to be the environment that I'm working in. I'll know more as that kind of evolves, but that's my rough setup. Buddy Boss has a cool new theme that I'll be working with customizing as well.
Yeah, who does LearnDash integrate with for your cart, your shopping cart? Do you know?
Everybody
Everybody good?
Yeah, I'll be doing PayPal, Stripe, and I don't know, maybe Bitcoin. Who knows? Anybody still left? I'll just take the rest of your Bitcoins.
How about Infusionsoft?
Yeah, so like,
did you have to swear?
No, sorry, Jonathan. That's the worst. I can blame it on Jonathan.
I guess I didn't even make a facial reaction to that question.
That.
I would not go Infusionsoft.
No, I'm not going to, man. I like WordPress. I think that it's cool to see what it could do. I know some of the strengths of it. This also ties in with the bigger thing of just like marketing this course well, doing it well, having all that set up, the drip content and the marketing and all of that, and really like just kind of rocking MailChimp and WordPress. I'm just going to try to get it done that way.
Yeah, I might have a semi-interesting question here. You know, you're developing this course now yourself. Are there any things that you learned from your years with Treehouse that you have learned that you're totally committed to applying to your own course?
Man, I want to give like a personal shout out to Tommy and Fred, who were an audio and video pair there at Treehouse. They weren't a pair, but they were to me and often work with me. So I really learned about audio a lot better, being able to hear things, being put in a professional. Yeah, by the way, sorry that my microphone wasn't plugged in, talking about learning lessons. I learned the value of it.
I should have stopped you sooner.
I call my co-host the sound Nazi, but he's totally right.
Okay, so working with someone who has literally a degree in sound production and knows this was so valuable. Also working with people on camera and being put in like really professional studio was so great, because I'd been making screencasts and courses before that, but it just really introduced me. So all the stuff I'm doing now, like we have, I want to give a shout out to my partners at GoDaddy because they were really helpful in helping me get some really good stuff.
I did like you, Zach, but you mentioned somebody.
I kind of, man, look, I don't know if you're going to make fun of GoDaddy, so let me give them a quick defense of, I really like that they've taken what they were and have put a lot of effort in a platform and marketing and hiring Mendel to turn around and help me do a course and have really good video production. So to jump back to the question of, yes, I learned a lot about that there. I learned more about how to not have to base assessment off of in-person and kind of more in-depth assessment of being able to just look at how much videos they watched or when they dropped off here or how regular they're doing, all these analytics and data that we track on the back end, how to be a more effective teacher based on that information. I also learned that having a support form is huge because like I used to try to email all my students and answer all the questions. And every time they completed a course, I was like asking them personal questions about the Treehouse thing. And then I'd write back to every single one. And I'm dealing with like hundreds of students and, like 80,000 students in the forums and answering all of this. So this is something I hope to try to bring into how I'm going to do this course and having somebody there for support and how I'm going to handle that. I haven't quite had enough mental space to think through these things, but I know that that's important. And then there's some stuff that they didn't do that I'm going to take the opportunity to try to implement.
Now, to ask hopefully another interesting question, I would never know, is that, you're going to do this online and, some people say, if you can do a course with your instructor face to face. I don't know where my own position is with this. Is there something special about being there with the instructor, or is it more that it's that to really do a good online course is just a ton of work, and a lot of the time that work isn't done? You got any insights about that?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think when it comes to short one-off things, like I don't understand how to use this and I can go on YouTube and watch a video and understand it, or I could read an article. That's one thing and it's helpful. When it comes to having to complete a whole course, so hours worth of content, or doing stuff regularly on your own over the course of several months and staying disciplined, that could be really, really hard. And I've even not always loved online learning personally because of that. However, if you have to wait to go see a person, if you have to pay to go see in person, if you have to take all the time to see in person, there's so many obstacles to that the accessibility of having it online allows us to do this a lot faster and often a lot cheaper. So this course, my hope is that after it launches, I could maybe hook up with some partners and do some little tours or in-person workshops or trainings. Because for me, I love being trained by a person, and I know that we connect and we share information in ways that are not just spoken. So being able to have that is a helpful thing. Yeah,
I might actually be able to give you some insight here, because in some, everything's new in some ways, but also nothing is new. That's the contradiction. Because there's a university called the Open University in Britain. It was started in the 1960s, and basically it did almost all its education through television late at night, using television programs. But what it combined was that every quarter month you would have meetups. You would go and spend a weekend, and then they also had like 3 weeks in the summer where all the students that was doing, these are degreed to MA level. So if they were doing physics, they would have their course books, they would have their lessons on television with the instructors, and then they would have these weekend and also summer school as well, and they combined it like that. So in some ways, nothing's really new, really. In some ways,
yeah, I hear you. That's a cool option. I don't always know how successful it is, but it just comes back to you really have to have the drive to do this. And that's such an important skill set to get your work done, not just to even let alone learn it.
So I've learned, somebody said, you were talking about 40 hours of actual instruction. Somebody said to me, for every hour instruction, you actually got to put 4 to 5 hours in. So if you're looking at 40 hours, you're looking at 5 times the amount of time to actually, absorb the training, practice, try it out, make mistakes, go back, review. Would you say that's about right?
Yeah, I hadn't thought. I usually just go with the simple equation of everything's always 3 times more than you think.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably a fair ratio. I've gotten better at planning courses and outlining and being able to do some of that, and I'm in a pretty good workflow now. So just like everything, you can kind of.
No, I meant for the students. I actually meant for the students.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant from my end. Okay.
No, I
think you're a much quicker learner than that.
I told you how much work it is creating a course.
No, I was like, that's actually kind of accurate. There's a lot more going on for each one. And if you edit the video, it's probably double that 5 times the amount. Okay. Yeah, so for learning, so for each hour, well, that's in part where I'm kind of trying to bundle this 40 to include some of that time. So this is not going to be 40 hours of my video and you just watching it, and then you have to go do 5 times the work on top of that. So I'm trying to include all of this, but there is some truth to that, and that it takes time, and you have to go do your own stuff. And some of learning, it's time lapse. So it'll catch you a week later when you're doing something completely random. You're like, oh, and so you need to account for that as part of your learning. It's an important part as well.
Zach, John, let me ask one last question. Yeah, sure. We need to tie this up by 7:30 in 9 more minutes. Okay.
Oh, it's been so fun. Thanks, guys.
Unless you want to stay on, Zach. We got a few folks coming in. We have a lot of competition tonight. There's some really high-end folks out there we're competing against for listeners. And this is pretty niche down. Hey, but my quick question is, okay, I've been in WordPress 2 years. I did a little HTML and just screw around stuff, Exchange server, 25 years of a user. 2 questions. First of all, I sort of like to go next level, just learn. I'll never be a programmer, but I'll be a user, a business guy. And I build about 17 or 18 WordPress websites. Use Genesis Dynamic. So where should I focus code that I do learn? CSS, HTML, or PHP?
CSS.
CS work. Yeah.
Here's why, because you change so much, and one of the hard things to do on a site is customize it. And so knowing CSS is important. Most of the stuff you'll need with PHP, you could copy and paste or don't need to know is in depth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That last few days I've been thinking about that. And CSS is.
I totally agree. I think having a real strong knowledge of CSS for the amount of things you'll be able to do.
That's good.
And funny enough, a bit of JavaScript maybe as well. A bit of jQuery. And if you learn your CSS, learning the jQuery isn't going to be awful, is it? Would you agree, Zach?
I think that you're less likely to ever edit or need to know how to write jQuery before you are CSS. So I'd almost say CSS, PHP, and then maybe jQuery. Although knowing what HTML to edit is part of CSS, but I don't think you need much more than that.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Yeah. So I almost forgot my.
I think that's most of the
let's go back. So when they've done your course, you can have a very diverse group of people, but you probably got somebody in mind as your kind of opt-in student you're aiming this for. So what is that vision of a student that you think, and then what would you hope if the student does your course? What do you hope would be the end result for that student?
You, dear listener, are the perfect person for my course. No, I'm kidding. I think that
you got me there.
The ideal person is someone who already knows or has this mindset of like, shoot, I need to learn this stuff. And they already have like 1 or 2 reasons in their head of why. Either just to stay on top of my field as a developer, I need to learn this, or there are some performance things and I'd like to play around with this. So really, I'm catering to these people who know that they need to learn all this and just want to go to one place where they could get to know JavaScript more deeply, understand the REST API, understand the frameworks, get familiar with like, you know, how to build stuff in React and that sort of thing, and come out of it and go, okay, cool, I know this now. I could either put this on the shelf or, oh, this next project, I want to take this on. We're going to do it in this way, and we're going to do it in this new pattern, and let's do it that way. Or like, okay, now I know I can apply for these jobs of places that are looking not as like the senior JS developer folks, but as, you know, kind of that mid-level, you could come into some project. So that's really my hope with this is like to help as many people get their homework done as possible. So if you feel called to learn JavaScript deeply or learn JavaScript in WordPress, like that's kind of the people I'm catering this to. I don't see your average power user coming along and taking this course.
And the truth is, if you do use it as a way to get a job as an intermediate, for the foreseeable future, I think you're going to have a decent level of income and employment, aren't you?
Or you're going to take this and you're going to be like, oh, wait, I can make double this just working as a pure JavaScript developer. Maybe I'll go do that. And actually, I hope to kind of open the world of JavaScript outside of the WordPress community a bit more in the process. I don't actually think that that's true, that you can make double just coding JavaScript, by the way. But yeah, so that's kind of my hope and my goal of where I'm going with it. And it's definitely, guys, it's been so community sustained. I would not have necessarily taken this task upon myself. I could be chilling a lot harder right now if it was.
That was one of the questions, kind of the end questions that I forgot to ask. How is the Kickstarter going? Has it ended, or you're still?
No, it didn't start. I kind of messed up, and I announced a date before I had officially heard back the approval. So that got paused a second to I have now I'm rescheduling the date and we'll re-announce that. It's just been so crazy with everything going on.
I'll put a little bit of money in it.
Hey man, I appreciate it, man. And
well, you're a decent guy, and I think we've had some fun on this interview, haven't we? And
this has been so much fun.
And I think you've had the opportunity maybe to explain yourself more clearly than maybe some other podcasts. And I think we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
Yeah, this has been good.
I think we have covered it. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, you know, I always get a lot out of it, believe it or not. I mean, I'm doing a lot of stuff. There's things happening. This is a busy night. I've got to edit for like 2.5 hours tonight, and I've got to eat yet.
That's my fault.
I learn every time I listen to one of this level, I learn something. I learn a lot. I'm going through that same battle right now of trying to find I don't know if I just want to do a membership site or a full learning management system, but I built a little course called Netcasting 101, which is really podcasting. Actually, it's more, I started doing podcasting. I was teaching people to go up on YouTube first, and then look at it before you go up into iTunes and get into RSS feed. So I was doing a little course on that. And then Blab came around, changed the world. We had an amazing discussion this morning on some new stuff that's happening. So It's changing so fast. I'm just trying to figure out, maybe you need to get some progressive type of evergreen training and you got to update it constantly. But you're right. It takes a long time to create, let's say to create a 10-minute clip could take an hour to do it right. I mean, it just takes, by the time you do the graphics, everything set up, I use ScreenFlow. I don't know what you use. What do you use, by the way, to build your courses?
Yeah. So I did some experimenting and did settle with ScreenFlow.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good product. It's a really good product. And there's a lot of add-ons you can add to it.
Yeah.
The other thing too, as I get older and I'm really busy, I've got to figure out, I want to be a business guy. I want to know who I know, like, and trust when I hire somebody. And I just need to know enough. I know I'm getting to know WordPress pretty well. But that said, if I don't do something over and over, and if I don't do it every day, I start forgetting. That's really frustrating. You learn something, and then if you don't use it, you forget it. And it's so true in this business.
It is so true. And just to quickly plug again, this course and some good advice I got from some of our advisors are, like, the project we build is a full decoupled front and back end in JavaScript that hooks up with the API. And we rebuild it like 3 or 4 different times with different frameworks and again and again. So like, that's one of the cool things about this is, we'll be doing some other little things, but we're going to like build this in just JavaScript, build this with jQuery, build this with your, you know, like keep on getting it more and more robust. So by the time you're like, okay, I'm now having dreams of me coding out like full blown JavaScript apps.
No, well, this is, you know, I would have no hesitation in recommending people your course because of your background in Treehouse. You know, it's not only the technical, you know, not only, obviously I asked some people about your technical ability and you got glowing marks, but that's important, but also you can't, even if you know the technical stuff, doesn't mean you're going to be very good at the teaching side, because teaching skills are a skill set on their own. Mm-hmm. And because of your experience with you know, I'm not being disparaging about other people that might be doing a new, depends on the size of the course. It's a difficult one, but especially with something as big as JavaScript and development in general, I would be a little bit hesitant taking on a course from somebody who might be a really good developer, but hasn't got any track record in teaching, because I think it could be a rather, how to put this, not the best end result that you hope for. But when you're dealing with you, because of your experience and also your technical experience, I think, you know, and because of your standards, there's a good chance it's going to be a very excellent course. So
I sure hope so. Well, thank you. And yeah, actually,
I'm not putting pressure on you at all, Zach. I'm not putting any pressure on you at all, am I?
9:30, 10:30. Let's see, 8:30, 9:30, 10:30. That's not that bad.
No. That wasn't bad, though, was it? It wasn't a bad ending.
No, and you make a good point. And honestly, I'm listening to a lot of lectures and reading books and taking courses from folks that aren't always trained teachers. And so, yeah, what I'm trying to do is like really compile all this and think through it and like, how do we learn this well? And yeah, that's my craft and what I enjoy. And it is a little bit different. And I'm grateful that I get to do that in this environment and with this stuff.
Hey, Zach, can you see the map up on the corner there? All the people who are listening, I know you need to
Hi, everyone on the map. I see you.
See there in England, all over South America. We've got somebody down there.
Howdy, folks.
So they're watching this.
It's not bad compared to the competition tonight. It'll be a good podcast.
Well, they just didn't know the quality of the discussion here, did they, Bill? You know, they don't
Canada.
know what
Yay!
They don't know what it was.
It's kind of fun. Actually, after the iTunes,
it's way up
iTunes
there in Canada. Someone's up north.
Doesn't anybody want to join us quickly? Anybody want to?
We got to get going. It's getting late. It's late in the East because 10:30.
All right,
I think I got the sound machine working too.
Oh, speaking of it getting late, I have to give a shout out. I have an amazing partner who's been super supportive. So for all of you people who have supportive partners or really stressed out, annoyed partners, like give them some love. Like do something sweet, do something nice. It's grateful. I'm grateful to have that right now.
Yeah, it's very true words. That it's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Awesome fun.
I've got. I'm trying to.
Yeah! There we go. The most epic ending ever.
Can I finish? It was a pleasure having you on the show. and I think Bill's too, Bill. What are you doing? Are you finished, Bill? Was that your phone? Was that your? Was that your phone?
So anyway,
Right.
because I'm using a Scarlett 2i2, which gives us really nice sound, but we really need to put the mixer back in. So.
Yeah, you do. Well, I think we're finished now. That it was a good show until that impromptu sound effect, Bill.
Yeah, that was good.
That was great.
Was that my fault? Was that my fault, Bill?
I've got to edit tonight. We do a daily show.
Wow.
Hey, Zach, I sent you a link to. I sent you an email. Go ahead and sign up. All you have to go is step 2 to pick a time.
Great. Cool.
It's in the morning normally, which is 12 o'clock your time.
Very
right
reasonable.
then.
Take care.
Thanks.
I'm going to stop the pause.